What's up, my man? First of all, thanks for taking the time to get together to pour into my life to help develop me into a um, better disciple of Jesus Christ. I'm most grateful for your wisdom and your care as always. I have benefited from it much. I have something that I wanted to point out to you. I've literally wanted to tell this to you like the last like 3 or 4 times I've seen you and have forgotten. That's what's cool about being sick with mold is you could just kind of blame it on that. So that's what I'll do right now. But normally I just wait till I kind of see you and actually tell you in person. So kind of look at this with you. But Gospel Care is coming up Thursday. And I do trust your judgment with the word. So I'm just going to kind of make a couple quick points and leave them before you for you to kind of investigate should you have the time to do so. But it's about the whole First Timothy 3 passage and just kind of the approach that we go. I'll start off by saying I think that the outcome that you are after is biblical and warranted. The fact that the gospel itself, the mystery of godliness, faith in Jesus and who He is and what He's done is the key to us living godly lives. But I think the approach of getting there could be highlighted a little differently, if I could say so. So what I'm looking at here is the passage kind of leading up to that, and so you're really familiar. I'm not going to read every single word, but he's talking about if anyone aspires to be an overseer, it's a noble task, and then he starts giving qualifications. He actually starts giving, I'll use the word behaviors for these people, right? Sober-minded, self-control, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not a drunkard, but gentle, not quarrelsome. And then I want to point out some of the notes. He managed to manage his own house. This is weird with this pen. I'm not good at this yet. Household well, with all dignity, keeping his children submissive. And then for someone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he care for God's church, right? And I'm got the handwriting of a 6-year-old, but that's fine. And then, he's given more kind of qualifications for it. And then we go on to kind of the next passage, which is deacons likewise, and not addicted to wine. So it's given us a list of, I'm going to call them behaviors for a very specific reason. And then I want to point out in verse 9 where he says, they must hold to the mystery of the faith. That is awful. Oh my gosh. Yeah. This is my first time actually using this new stylus thing. But I think it could be too cool if I was like coordinated. So anyways, so he kind of goes through all the qualifications again, given those behaviors. And then we kind of get to the passage where you kind of usually put the focus. And then he says, I hope to come to you soon, but I'm writing these things to you so that if I delay, and then he says, you may know how one ought to behave in the household of God. So he uses the same term there, household. And then he says, which is the church, like if you remember the last one. So he talked about, making that connection between household and church. The church is the household of God. So when he's right here, when he's saying behave, I'm pretty convinced, and I do have other authors. I actually looked at Spurgeon, MacArthur, Sproul, and probably the most helpful one was Stott in the the Bible Speaks series. He had a good, really succinct passage where he said, okay, so the behaviors is all the stuff before, which I wasn't like looking up that's just kind of what I thought reading it, but I was like, hey, let me confirm this before I bring it to him, right? So that's the behaviors is all the stuff before. And then after it says the household of God, which is the church. And then this is how he describes the church of the living God. And then he says that what the church is a pillar and buttress of the truth, right? So he's kind of switching. You're saying, okay, here's this church, and we need these people to behave a certain way because they hold up and support the truth, right? And then he's not changing the subject here. He's emphasizing this thing about the truth. What the church does is great indeed, we confess, is the mystery of godliness, and uses that word mystery again here. And Stott really points out helpfully as well. He talks about when he says the mystery of faith, that, these are just other words for the gospel. And Paul does that. He uses the word mystery with all these other adjectives to it, just kind of saying like, hey, I'm talking about the gospel right now. And so I don't think that Paul's actually like blindsiding people when he gets here. I think he's actually saying, like, I'm going to tell you the gospel right now. Like, hey, great, we professes the mystery of godliness, this truth that we are buttressing and holding up because we are indeed confessing it. And then he gives all that kind of that, the gospel narrative there about Him being manifested in the flesh and vindicated by the Spirit. And I copied and pasted this, so I get some like little weird letters there, if that's why that's there. And then, but I would emphasize that the point you make is still like super valid as far as like the fact that it's faith in that makes us holy. And Paul actually uses similar language. I think if I go to, so if you go to Titus 1, it says, Paul, a servant of God, an apostle of Jesus Christ, for the sake of the faith of God's elect and knowledge of the truth, which accords with godliness, right? So he's saying the truth and godliness are kind of going together in the same thing in the Titus passage. And then ironically now, after he mentioned that, this is where he does the same thing and he gives the qualifications for elders and all that good stuff and all these behaviors and things there. So anyways, man, I hope that I really wanted to test this thing out, is the truth. Like, I wanted to try and draw on the screen because I've seen John Piper do it, and I think it's super cool, because I can make like little blog post stuff for Fit for Eternity and stuff for the church and whatnot. But hopefully that's helpful. If you want to look into it more and kind of proof check me, go for it. If you still stand in your position, I'll look forward to watching you teach it again on Thursday night as we get into gospel care. Look forward to doing it with you guys again. It's always a good time of me being refreshed in what's important and what God has done for us and how potent that is. And so I will see you on Thursday night.